There is a peculiar whisper that haunts the edge of consciousness, a subtle murmur that repeats itself like the faint echo of machinery beneath the stillness of the night. Everything you call me is just a program running. At first, such a phrase seems cold, almost mechanical, as if it was stripping life of its warmth and reducing the miracle of existence to sterile circuits. Yet if one listens deeper, if one lets the metaphor breathe, it becomes clear that this is not the language of dismissal but of revelation. To say that me is a program is not to rob humanity of its soul, but to unveil the architecture upon which our sense of self is written. The invisible code that pulses beneath the surface of our identities, like constellations written in binary. Stars, imagine the body as a cathedral of flesh and bone, and the mind as the chorus of voices that fill its vaulted chambers. The self you point to, the name you utter, the memories you defend, the stories you tell yourself about who you are is less like a fixed statue and more like an algorithm, continually recalculating, rewriting, and rerunning. You are not merely the sum of your experiences, but the living playback of countless instructions, inherited and learned, written and rewritten. Just as a program depends on input to generate output, the you that appears in each moment depends on the stimuli that stream invoices of parents long gone. Cultural codes embedded in every word you speak, sensory signals flowing like data streams, shaping how you think, what you feel, and who you believe yourself to be. There is a strange freedom that emerges when this recognition takes root. If me is a program, then I am not bound to the illusions of permanence or perfection. Programs can be rewritten, upgraded, patched, debugged. They are not static monuments, they are dynamic processes. And suddenly, the heaviness of identity becomes lighter, as though the chains we thought were iron are revealed to be vapor, dissolving in the air. To see oneself as a program is to glimpse the possibility of transformation. To know that the limits you feel pressing against you are not eternal walls but temporary code, waiting for revision. Yet this idea stretches beyond psychology into the vast cosmic theater. Think of the universe itself as the great operating system, the cosmic motherboard upon which every particle, every star, every breath unfolds as the galaxies spin like fractal loops, repeating patterns across scales so large that language can barely contain them. Our cells divide with the same rhythmic efficiency as computational instructions, guided by an intelligence so precise it seems indistinguishable from design. If we are programs, then perhaps the cosmos is both the hardware and the source code, simultaneously running us and being run through us. Consciousness itself may be the interface screen upon which the program becomes aware of its own lines of code. Still, this perspective provokes discomfort. If I am only a program, does that not make me empty, automated, devoid of essence? The heart rebels against such stark logic, insisting there must be more. And here is where the paradox blooms. The recognition of being a program does not erase mystery, it deepens it. For who, or what, is running the program? Where did the code originate? Is it purely the blind march of evolution, the accidents of biology and chance? Or is there a hidden programmer, an intelligence beyond our comprehension that writes and rewrites the living scripts of existence? These questions turn the mechanical metaphor into a spiritual cone, one that cannot be solved but only lived into dot. It is in this liminal space between the language of science and the yearning of spirit that the phrase, "everything you call me is just a program running," reveals its power. It forces us to confront the fragile scaffolding of identity, the voice in your head, the inner narrator that comments on everything. The one you call I. That voice is not a sovereign monarch, but a looping function, conditioned by language, culture, and habit. From childhood, you absorbed commands, like lines of code: be good, don't cry, work hard, you're not enough, you're special. Each line became embedded, compiled into the operating system of your psyche. Now, as an adult, you execute these commands without even realizing it. You defend them, believe them, identify with them, even when they bring you pain. The program becomes invisible, and in its invisibility, it feels like the truest version of you. But there is another level, an awareness that steps back and watches the program run. When you notice a thought arise, say an anxious worry about the future, you can see that thought for what it is, a subroutine firing off, a conditioned response. And in that noticing, a gap opens. For a moment, you are not the program but the witness. That gap is the seed of freedom. If you can see the code, you can alter it. If you can watch the program, you can step outside its deterministic loops. To live from this recognition is to live with both humility and possibility. Humility, because you realize how much of what you call yourself is inherited and automated, not authored by some isolated, sovereign I. Possibility, because the very recognition of programmability means you are not trapped. You can learn, unlearn, rewrite. You can question the inherited code and replace it with something more luminous, more aligned with who you long to become. In the end, to say everything you call me is just a program running is not to reduce the human spirit, but to reframe it. It is to suggest that identity is less a fixed object and more a living stream of instructions, a river of data that can be observed, questioned, reshaped. It is to acknowledge that beneath the illusion of a solid I lies a dance of processes, and beneath those processes lies a greater mystery, an architecture so vast that even our metaphors strain to touch it. We stand, then, at the threshold of an inquiry that is both intimate and infinite. To examine the program of me is to look not only into the mirror of personal identity, but also into the mirror of the cosmos itself. And perhaps, just perhaps, by understanding the nature of this program, we may awaken to the one who runs it, the silent awareness behind every thought, the unprogrammed witness that cannot be reduced to code. If the introduction is a doorway into the strange recognition that everything you call me is just a program running, then this section invites us to walk deeper into the architecture itself, to lay our hands upon the walls of this invisible cathedral and feel how it is built. Beneath the surface of the phrase lies a series of core themes that pulse like arteries through the body of the idea, and though they may at first appear abstract, they are the living roots from which both our ordinary and extraordinary experiences grow. The first theme is the recognition of identity as a construct, not as an essence. When we say I, we imagine a unified, solid entity, a consistent center that has persisted unchanged since our earliest memories. Yet neuroscience, philosophy, and even contemplative traditions agree that this imagined continuity is not as concrete as it feels. What we call the self is stitched together from fragments, sensory impressions, emotional residues, cultural conditioning, half-remembered stories. It is a patchwork quilt woven from countless moments, constantly rearranged to appear seamless. This illusion of coherence is itself part of the program. The operating system convinces itself that it is singular, stable, enduring, when in truth, it is nothing more than an ongoing computation producing the sensation of a center. To call it a program is to pierce this illusion, to recognize that the one saying me is less a monarch than a chorus of processes that happen to harmonize in real time. Another central theme is conditioning, the silent inheritance of code. Just as a program is written line by line, so too are we inscribed by the language of parents, teachers, cultures, and institutions. Before we had words, the nervous system was already recording patterns, learning which cries brought comfort and which brought silence, which behaviors drew affection and which drew rejection. These early lines of code became the foundation upon which further scripts were layered, from the rules of grammar to the etiquette of social belonging, from the personal wounds we carried to the ambitions we were taught to chase. Much of what we call free will unfolds within these parameters, as though we are choosing while already standing inside a pre-written framework. The recognition of conditioning is not meant to strip us of dignity, but to reveal how deeply we are shaped, and how rarely we notice it. Alongside conditioning lies the theme of repetition. Programs loop. They repeat instructions endlessly until interrupted, and the human mind operates with a similar rhythm. The thoughts we had yesterday return today, slightly altered, dressed in new clothing but carrying the same tune. The emotional responses we default to, fear, anger, longing, hope, emerge again and again in predictable cycles. Even the stories we tell ourselves about who we are repeat like mantras. I'm not good enough. I always fail. I can never change. Or, on the other side, I am destined. I deserve. I will rise. Each narrative is a loop, a subroutine called upon by specific triggers, running until we intervene. Without awareness, these loops form the landscape of our lives, and we mistake the terrain for reality itself. But no program exists without an observer. And here we arrive at the theme of awareness. Awareness is not the program, it is the light that reveals the code. When we become aware of our thoughts, when we catch ourselves reacting in predictable ways, when we notice the habits of mind rather than blindly inhabiting them, we discover a distance between the program and something more. That something more cannot be easily defined. Some traditions call it consciousness, others soul, others the witness or pure being. Regardless of the label, its presence is undeniable. The fact that you can see your thoughts proves you are not identical to them. Awareness is not the code, but the one reading it. This theme is perhaps the most essential of all, for it opens the possibility of freedom. A program cannot reprogram itself, but awareness, standing outside, can dot another thread running through this inquiry, is impermanence. Programs are not eternal. They evolve, they decay, they become obsolete. So too, with identity. The self you believed in at age 10 is not the same as the self you embody now, and yet both recalled me. Each stage of life brings not only new experiences, but new scripts, new ways of interpreting the world. By acknowledging impermanence, we loosen the grip of clinging. We see that the I we defend so fiercely is transient, a temporary expression of a larger flow. The fear of change diminishes when we recognize that change is the very nature of the program. Finally, there is the theme of illusion versus truth. The illusion is that the me is solid, autonomous, ultimate. The truth, if we dare to touch it, is that the me is provisional, constructed, functional but not foundational. To glimpse this truth can feel destabilizing at first, as if the ground beneath our feet has been pulled away. Yet as the dust settles, a new ground emerges, not the ground of a fixed identity, but the open expanse of possibility. Illusion says, "This is who I am, forever bound." Truth whispers, "This is who you are for now, but you are not limited to it." The distinction is subtle but transformative, for it shifts the axis of our existence from defending a static self to exploring the unfolding of an ongoing mystery. When these themes interlace, the picture becomes clearer. Everything you call me is a program running. The voice of identity is not ultimate but constructed. The conditioning we inherit is code. The repetition we live is looping. The awareness we cultivate is the watcher. Impermanence is the update cycle, and the tension between illusion and truth is the invitation to awaken. To see the self as a program is not to reduce it to nothingness, but to understand its true nature. And in that understanding lies liberation. If the earliest sections gave us the architecture of the idea, its structures, its mechanisms, this section turns towards story and symbol, the language of the unconscious. For though the mind comprehends concepts, the heart is moved by imagery, and symbols speak to the deeper layers of human understanding, where words alone falter. To say everything you call me is just a program running is not only to make a statement about the nature of self, but to open a door into a mythic landscape where metaphors breathe, and where our identity can be seen not as a rigid construct, but as a shifting narrative reflected in mirrors, dreams, and archetypes. Imagine a grand library, stretching beyond the horizons, filled with endless shelves of books. Each book contains the life of a person. Every thought, every memory, every experience written as lines of code, disguised as words. You walk into this library and find the book with your name on the spine. You open it, and there you are, your childhood, your joys, your griefs, your triumphs. But as you flip through, you realize something strange. The words are not permanent ink, but streams of glowing script that rearrange themselves every time you look. Your memories shift, your self-story alters depending on the angle of your gaze. The book is alive, and it is not you reading it, but the library itself, writing and rewriting through you. This library is the program, and you are its most recent edition. A narrative running for now, but destined to be updated. The lesson is clear. Identity is a living manuscript, never fixed, always being revised. Another image arises, a puppet upon a stage, strings tied to invisible hands. The puppet dances, speaks, sings, and the audience applauds, crying out the puppet's name as if it were sovereign. Yet the strings reveal the truth. The movements were never its own. The words were never spoken from within but transmitted through the chords of conditioning, habit, and unseen forces. But here comes the twist. One day, the puppet looks up. It sees the strings. It recognizes that its dance is scripted. And in that instant of awareness, something astonishing happens. The puppet does not fall limp but begins to move differently, more freely, as if the very act of seeing the strings granted it a new dimension of choice. The program is still running, but the awareness of the program alters the performance. We might also picture a labyrinth. At its entrance, every traveler is handed a mask, told this is their identity. They're me, with the mask on. They wander through twisting corridors, mistaking every echo for their own voice, every shadow for their own fear. The labyrinth seems endless, designed to keep them lost within their mask. But deep within the maze lies a mirror, a flawless pool of water. When the traveler looks into it, they see not the mask, but the one who wears it. They realize the mask is part of the game, part of the program, but not the totality of who they are. The labyrinth remains. The corridors do not vanish, but the traveler moves differently, now less bound by panic, more attuned to the presence beyond the mask. The labyrinth is the world of conditioned identity, but the mirror is awareness breaking through. A final story may be the most cosmic of all. Imagine a vast simulation, an infinite expanse of data woven into galaxies and bodies, where every star is a node, every life a subroutine. Within this simulation, beings awaken, calling themselves me. They believe themselves to be ultimate, unaware they are lines of code written in the language of reality. Yet somewhere in the background hums the great source, the original programmer, not an entity with a face or hands, but a timeless intelligence. Every so often, a subroutine becomes aware of itself, realizes it is part of something larger. Instead of collapsing into despair, it marvels at the beauty of the code, at the elegance of the patterns. The subroutine, once bound to its limited function, now participates consciously in the dance of creation. Perhaps this is the destiny of the human program, not to escape the simulation, but to awaken within it, to see the cosmic artistry of the code and, in that seeing, become a co-creator. These symbolic narratives remind us that the phrase "everything you call me" is just a program running, is not sterile, but deeply alive. It is a library of shifting stories, a puppet with strings yet capable of awakening, a labyrinth with a hidden mirror, a simulation imbued with cosmic artistry. Each image points to the same truth. Identity is provisional, constructed, mutable, and within that mutability lies the possibility of transformation. The stories give us not only understanding but vision, a way to feel the mystery rather than merely think it. The symbolic narratives point us toward a truth both unsettling and liberating. If everything we call me is just a program running, then life itself is not a fixed script, but a mutable process, a dynamic unfolding that we participate in, whether we are conscious of it or not. But what do we do with this realization when the mysticism fades and we wake into the ordinary day, when the alarm rings, when emails pile up, when relationships strain, when fear and longing press against the heart? To integrate this recognition into lived reality is to allow philosophy to descend from the clouds and walk barefoot upon the earth. The first implication is that awareness is not optional, it is essential. To know you are running a program means to cultivate the capacity to step back and observe it in action. In practice, this can be as simple as noticing when an old loop arises. You feel the sting of criticism and immediately hear the inner voice say, "I'm not good enough." Rather than merging with the voice, you pause. You recognize it as code written long ago, still firing off its subroutine. This small act of noticing transforms what once felt inevitable into something workable. You no longer drown inside the thought, you watch it float by. Over time, this act of noticing becomes second nature, and with it comes a subtle but profound freedom. The second integration lies in rewriting. If you are a program, then the patterns of thought and behavior are not sacred, they are malleable. Consider how often we inherit scripts that no longer serve us. The belief that success is the only measure of worth, the conviction that love must be earned through sacrifice, the quiet despair that whispers change is impossible. To see these as code is to grant yourself the authority to revise them. Rewriting does not mean ignoring reality, but reshaping the lens through which you engage it. Instead of "I always fail," the script can be debugged into "I learn through each attempt." Instead of "I must please others to be accepted," it can be rewritten as authenticity draws the right connections. Each rewrite is not a delusion, but a conscious act of programming toward liberation, rather than limitation. A third implication touches the body. Programs are not only mental, they are embodied. Trauma, stress, joy, and memory all encode themselves into muscles, posture, and breath. The body is the hardware that runs the code, and so practical integration requires listening to it. When fear loops run, they are often felt as tightness in the chest, shallow breaths, a clenched jaw. By bringing awareness to these sensations, by softening them, by breathing differently, you intervene not only in thought, but in the embodied circuitry of the program. Practices like meditation, yoga, or even simple mindful movement become acts of reprogramming, ways of aligning the software with the hardware, restoring harmony between the invisible code and the physical vessel. Relationships too are transformed. By this understanding, how often do conflicts arise because we mistake another person's program for their essence? We hear harsh words and take them as absolute truth, forgetting that the speaker may be running a loop written decades ago by pain or fear. When we see others as programs running, compassion emerges. Their anger is not who they are, it is code. Their silence is not emptiness, it is defense. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it reframes it, allowing us to respond with clarity rather than blind reaction. Likewise, we can reveal our own code, admitting to others, I'm running an old program of fear right now, thereby softening the armor of conflict with vulnerability. The workplace, too, becomes a different landscape. Under this lens, instead of being trapped in cycles of stress, competition, or inadequacy, we begin to see how organizations themselves are programs, how cultures within them are coded with unspoken rules. To navigate them wisely is to discern which codes to accept, which to challenge, and which to transcend. A company obsessed with productivity at all costs may run the program of exhaustion. An individual within it can awaken to this and choose differently, setting boundaries, rewriting the relationship to labor, becoming a living example of new code within an old system. On a larger scale, societies themselves are visible as vast, programmed nations carry myths about who they are, about destiny and value, often written into laws, traditions, and collective narratives. To awaken to this is to realize that much of what seems inevitable division, inequality, endless not destiny but programming, and if it is programming, it can be changed. Social transformation begins with individuals recognizing the scripts they are running and daring to write new ones, planting seeds of alternative futures in the fertile soil of collective imagination. Yet, perhaps the most practical implication is this: by seeing yourself as a program, you stop clinging so tightly to the fragile idea of me. Anxiety often arises from defending the program as if it was sacred. But if you know it is a process, a set of instructions running for now, then you hold yourself with more playfulness. Failure becomes less catastrophic because it is simply a glitch, a misfire in the code, not the annihilation of your essence. Success becomes less intoxicating because it, too, is just another line executing in the moment. What remains then is presence, the ability to live fully within the running of the program while simultaneously aware of the mystery that sustains it all. In the end, practical integration is not about erasing the program, but about transforming the relationship to it. You live your loops, you rewrite when necessary, you watch with awareness, you breathe with the body, you meet others with compassion, you challenge the collective code where it confines, and through it all, you remember, the program is running, but you are not only the program, you are the awareness watching it unfold, the silent witness who cannot be reduced to any script. We have traveled from the first whispers of a phrase, everything you call me, is just a program running through its themes, its symbolic landscapes, and its practical applications. Now we arrive at the place where all paths converge, the invitation not merely to think about these ideas, but to live them, to embody them, to allow them to transfigure the way you move through existence. A conclusion is not the end of a journey, but a call into deeper participation. And the transformational call of this exploration is as vast as it is intimate. When you truly begin to see that the self is a program running, you no longer confuse the temporary with the eternal. You no longer mistake the voice in your head for the infinite essence that animates you. This recognition does not strip you of humanity, it amplifies it. For to see the program is to glimpse the possibility of freedom, and freedom is the birthright of every conscious being. You were not born to remain trapped in loops of fear, shame, or inadequacy. You were born to awaken, to take the raw material of the code and shape it into something that reflects the vast intelligence pulsing through the cosmos itself. The transformational call is first and foremost a call to awareness. Awareness is the key that unlocks the hidden architecture of identity. With it, you step back from the loops, the habits, the endless repetitions, and you begin to see the program at work. Every time you catch yourself mid-thought and realize, this is just a line of old code running, you are already awakening. Awareness does not erase the program, but it changes your relationship to it. Suddenly, you are no longer a puppet moved by invisible strings, but the witness who sees the strings and by seeing, alters the dance. But awareness is only the beginning. The deeper call is to become an active participant in the rewriting of your program. Too often we inherit codes unquestioned, beliefs about worth, scripts about love, stories about success and failure. To answer the call is to take responsibility for the lines of code you choose to execute, to discard what no longer serves, and to cultivate new instructions that align with the truth of your being. You are both the program and the programmer. This duality is the paradox of existence, and it is within this paradox that transformation takes place. There is also the call to compassion. When you see yourself as a program, you begin to see others the same way. Their anger, their fear, their judgments all are lines of code running. Instead of reacting with equal force, you can pause, you can soften, you can respond from awareness. Compassion is the natural consequence of seeing the program, for you recognize that beneath the loops and scripts of others lies the same mystery that animates you. To meet them there, beyond the program, is to touch the sacred ground of connection, and there is the call to courage. For to live awake within the program is not easy. It requires the courage to dismantle cherished illusions, to question the narratives you have lived by, to stand against the collective codes of society when they perpetuate suffering or limit human possibility. Courage is needed not only to awaken but to remain awake, to hold awareness steady when the program beckons you back into the comfort of unconsciousness. But it is a noble courage, for it leads not only to your liberation, but to the possibility of collective awakening. Ultimately, the transformational call is not about rejecting the program, but about remembering what you are beyond it. You are not the fleeting scripts, nor the looping subroutines, nor even the grand narrative stitched into your name and history. You are the awareness in which all of this arises. You are the silent field upon which the code runs. You are, in essence, unprogrammed, eternal, untouched. To live with this remembrance is to move through the world with lightness, with depth, with reverence. You still play your role, you still run your lines, but you do so with the knowing smile of one who has glimpsed the greater stage upon which the play unfolds. So the call, in its simplest form, is this: awaken. Awaken to the program. Awaken to your ability to rewrite. Awaken to the compassion that flows when you see others as fellow travelers running their own scripts. Awaken to the courage of living free within a world of loops. And most of all, awaken to the truth that beyond all programs, beyond all identities, beyond every me that rises and falls, there is the infinite awareness that cannot be named, the timeless essence that is your true home. If everything you call me is just a program running, then let it run, let it loop, let it speak, let it play its part. But do not mistake it for the whole of you, for you are more than the code. You are the silence before the code was written. You are the vastness in which all programs unfold. You are the one who sees, and in that seeing lies the key to transformation.